All right, let's go ahead and get started. So thanks again for joining us. This is this month's version of PAC's monthly webinar. Today we're going to be talking about the PAC RC-1 Boost and improving the performance of resilient channel. So for those of you who don't know me, I am Mike Rayleigh. I am PAC's acoustician, and we're going to go ahead and get right into this. We've got a decent number of folks here today, so if you've got questions, you can always put them into the chat, but otherwise, save them for the end. The presentation shouldn't be that long, so we'll have some time at the end to discuss, answer any questions that you might have. If you want to get into more details about the boost, acoustical testing, any of that kind of stuff, we'll stick around as long as there are other people sticking around asking questions. So. Yeah, save questions for the end or put them into the chat so we make sure we get them and you don't forget them. And with that, we'll go ahead. So first off, I just wanted to kind of start with a little bit broader kind of conversation here. That, these days, the past year and a half especially, we've all been spending a lot more time at home, and our homes have had to become much more multifaceted, serve a lot more purposes than they had before in a lot of ways, or serve those purposes more often. Besides just being a place to eat and sleep and relax, they've become offices, right? They've become our schools, our gyms, our yoga studios, all these different functions that they try to cramming into our homes, right? And also with all the chaos and everything going on in the world and stress that we may be feeling, like hopefully we're able to find a bit of sanctuary in our home. And one thing that a lot of these activities have in common is that they require quiet, right? We need quiet in order to relax, in order to focus to work, for our kids to learn, and all of these different things, right? And so quiet really is becoming more and more important, and I think we've been thinking about it a lot more, and noise control in the built environment a lot more, and we've been forced to spend more time in our homes trying to do all of these different things. And this shows up, but quiet as a thing that tenants and people, renters have wanted, goes back long before COVID, obviously, right? And spending more time in our homes. So the National Multifamily Housing Council does this thing every year, where they do a big survey of tenants and they look at the amenities and different things like that they're interested in. And one thing that shows up consistently in that is that people want quiet, right? They often talk about, like they asked, in the survey about soundproof walls. And in their disruption report from 2018, they talked about how 91% of renters say that soundproof walls are important to them, right? So this is a broad thing that lots of tenants want. And also in apartments, we're kind of getting into this arms race, especially in market rate and higher end apartments, where developers are adding more and more amenities to try to attract tenants. And you're getting into, far beyond the typical swimming pool and a gym with a few treadmills and weight machines or something like that, right? You get into, bowling alleys and basketball courts and all these different outdoor amenity spaces, roof decks, and these different things. I've seen, an apartment in Seattle with a tree house. There's an apartment I read about that offered dog yoga as an amenity. All of these different things that people are doing to try and intrigue tenants and get them to come in and to rent in their building, right? But a lot of times these amenities are expensive, and they also require maintenance, upkeep, staff to maintain them or do these different things. And a lot of times renters, they look cool in brochures and they look cool when you're coming and touring the space, but renters often don't wind up using them as much. They don't benefit them on a daily basis. And amongst all these amenities, there's one that is often overlooked, right? But doesn't require any maintenance or upkeep or anything like that. And that's quiet, right? Quiet is an amenity too. And they ask about it in these NMHC surveys, right? They talk about all these different amenities, and they ask, how much do you want these different things, or how many people want them, right? So, things like smart locks and smart thermostats that are sort of all the rage these days as we're moving more and more towards smart homes and integrated systems and all of this. But those are at 67 and 77% of people that find them interesting. More typical things like pools and fitness centers are in the mid 80s, but soundproof walls comes in at 94%. right? So this is a thing that most tenants really value. It's also something that they're willing to pay for. So these NMHC surveys also ask how much are tenants or people willing to pay for certain amenities. And so, typical things like a washer and dryer in the unit, $41, right? I know that when my wife and I were looking for an apartment, when we were about to have our first kid, a washer and dryer in the unit was really important because we were dead set on doing cloth diapers, which we did. And I say we, my wife did cloth diapers. So a washer and dryer in the unit was a huge one for us with that, right? Central air conditioning is another one. But soundproof walls also shows up in here. And so you see that tenants are willing to pay, they say they're willing to pay an additional about $38 a month for soundproof walls, which over the course of a 12-month lease comes to about $455. That's not insignificant. And the other thing about noise control is it's once and done, right? A lot of these other amenities, like I said, they require maintenance, staff, you've got compatibility issues with a lot of the smart devices, technology changes rapidly. So what's cool now might not be in a few years or might not be compatible with the newest operating systems and all this kind of stuff, right? So noise control products don't have any of those issues. And so far, quiet has never gone out of style, right? Good acoustics has never been out of style, and I don't see it going there anyway. So that's kind of my lead in to the boost, right? I've been trying to figure out, like, how do I talk about acoustics and get people to pay more attention to acoustics and spend money on acoustics in the built environment? Because I think it's an often overlooked necessity and amenity luxury that we can provide to tenants and people in the built environment that really helps with this idea of wellness and indoor environmental quality and everything like that. That is a big movement and a big topic of conversation these days. So how does the boost help with all of that? So first, what on earth is the boost? So the boost is a little rubber isolator that works with all resilient channel to improve the acoustical performance of the resilient channel. And you can see a picture of it here. This is the rubber isolator, and this is the special screw that comes with it. So it improves the acoustical performance of resilient channel. Like I said, it's included in 77 UL assemblies. That includes floor ceiling assemblies and wall assemblies. We have extensive acoustical testing for it. We've got quite a bit on floor ceiling assemblies. We also have some on walls, and we have time scheduled in the lab next month to do some additional testing on walls. It's easy to install. It's readily available. We've got them sitting in our warehouse right now, ready to ship out. Like I said, it works on walls and ceilings, and it's compatible with all resilient channel. I've got an asterisk or a little note here because while it's compatible with all resilient channel, we've tested it on quite a few, but not all the different permutations. I think we've tested on 8 different types of resilient channel, the 8 most common to our knowledge. So in terms of installation, so the spacing, you put the boost at every hole where you're attaching the resilient channel to the structure. So it'll be at 24 inches on center for framing that's at 16 inches on center, or 16 inches on center for framing that's at 24 inches on center. Just the spacing of your channels, right? Actually, I guess that would be the spacing of your channel. The boost would actually follow the spacing of your structure. I think I did that wrong. Sorry. So you place boost over the pre-punched holes in the resilient channel, right? I've got a little widget right here. I don't know if you can see. My screen's probably smaller. So you just place it over at the pre-punched holes and put the screw through it. We provide the fasteners with it. We have screws that are specially designed to work with the boost to help optimize the acoustical performance. And you tighten the fastener until the boost is just touching the framing and the screw head. You don't over tighten it, and you don't want to under tighten it and let it loose and wobble. And we provide actually a custom installation tool. You can see it here that goes on the tip of your drywall screw gun, and that helps set that depth. So you can make sure you can get consistent results, that you don't over tighten it or under tighten it. And all the RC channels should be installed facing the same direction. Follow all the same general installation guidelines with resilient channel that you would that you would follow otherwise, right? Like don't use drywall screws that are too long to attach a drywall to the resilient channel so that you short circuit it. You know, all of those other things that go in there, either for acoustical performance or for the fire performance, to make sure that you're following the UL assemblies. You do all that same stuff. You're just adding the boost at those holes where you're attaching it to the structure. And in terms of fire, like I said, it's included in 77 UL fire rated assemblies. So primarily what we have now are wood assemblies. We were waiting on screws that specifically were designed for steel. We have those screws now. We've done the load testing and all of that on them. So we'll be working at getting the boost included in a bunch of steel assemblies. So steel floor ceiling assemblies and steel stud assemblies as well. And that's the acoustical testing. Some of the testing that we're going to go do next month is testing the boost on steel stud walls to verify its performance there. And you can see here all the different assemblies that it's included in right now. So it's not just like a few of them, there's quite a few assemblies. So if you're looking for, you know, a typical wood floor ceiling assembly or a wood wall assembly, you know, there's odds are you can find one that includes the boost in it. So now let's talk about acoustical performance, right? So we're talking about, you know, kind of quiet as an amenity, and this idea that, you know, people really want quiet. They're willing to pay more for quiet, soundproof walls, all this kind of stuff. And part of what comes into that is like, I mean, it's not just an amenity, right? It is a requirement. So within the code, we do have a code requirement for sound isolation between spaces in multifamily buildings. And that's SDC and IIC 50, right? But that's the building code, and it's a minimum standard, right? It's not necessarily what people are desiring when they're talking about quiet or soundproof walls. And so that minimum isn't going to satisfy a lot of people. And in fact, a large percentage of people will be highly annoyed by noises from their neighbors just if we use the code minimums, right? And that can lead to reduced quality of life, negative health effects, both physical and mental, right? All of the knock-on health effects that come from, you know, increased stress levels and lack of sleep, all of those kinds of things, kind of where it tends to come from. And this isn't, you know, from some acoustics conference proceedings paper or something like that. That's from the International Code Council, the people that have that minimum code, right? It's from the 2010 guidelines for acoustics. So if the code minimums don't satisfy this desire for quiet, what can we do, right? And how does the boost help? So a typical assembly might be an open web truss, very common multifamily construction. Got a gypsum concrete pour, floating engineered wood flooring with an underlayment, and RC-Deluxe for the ceiling and a single layer of type C. And that can get us pretty good acoustical ratings, at least in the lab when it's built right. We won't get into all of the issues with that into the field. But, you know, we got an SDC rating of 59 and an IIC of 55. So that's comfortably above the code minimums of 50. But a lot of times we don't get the deluxe, right? For the acoustical consultants that's on here, I'm sure that you've all run into situations where you've specified deluxe, but you didn't get that. And so you get something else. And oftentimes those other resilient channels don't perform as well as deluxe. And so we see here, here's a test for another type of resilient channel. The SDC rating was the same, but the IIC rating was a few points down. And so it's starting to get now close to that code minimum of IIC 50. And I've also included HIC and LIC ratings for the acoustical consultants that are on here. I won't get into those right now and what they mean, but next month's presentation is going to be on acoustic rating, including the new HIC and LIC ratings. So if you're curious what those are, come join us next month. So now what happens when we add the boost to these, right? So if we add the boost to the standard, you know, this assembly with the standard RC-Deluxe, we get a 5-point improvement in the IIC rating, right? Which is significant. That's really sort of like a lot of times consultants and things will use like sort of 5-point increments as like the different sort of like grades or levels of acoustical performance. So basically that 5-point jump in IIC takes you to sort of another grade level of acoustical performance. So we gain a little bit in the SDC, and that's somewhat limited by lab flanking limits and things. I won't get into that, but you gain 5 points in the IIC, also 5 in the HIIC, and 6 in the LIIC. And then if we come to the other resilient channel, in this case it was a Phillips channel, again, we gain 5 points in the IIC, less in the HIIC, and a smidge less in the LIIC. Excuse me. But we see these big bumps in the IIC performance. So like with this, sort of Phillips RC channel, we were at an IIC 52, so we were close to that code minimum. But now just by adding the boost, we've gotten this 5-point boost in the IIC rating, and now we're at 57. We're well above the code minimum, and we're starting to get into this area where fewer people will be annoyed by noise from their upstairs neighbors stomping around. So if we talk about those different sort of like grades, again, coming from the 2010 guidelines for acoustics from the ICC, so they talk about the code minimums, which are SDC and IIC laboratory ratings of 50, but they also give these grade B and grade A sort of performance levels of acceptable and preferred performance. So 55 would be the acceptable, or like a grade B, and 60 would be grade A. So if we look at over here on the right, these results, right? The RC-1, SDC 59, that's around grade A. IIC 52, that's basically code minimum. But if we add the boost, we're comfortably at A and a solid B. So we've moved up a grade, right? Deluxe is a 59 and a 55, so it's at A, B, but again, we add the boost and we're solidly at that A level of performance. So it takes us to another level of performance just by adding the boost without changing anything else in our assembly. And it doesn't add a whole lot of cost to it, which is what I'm going to go into next. So I just want to come back to this because this is, for me, this is really interesting information to see what tenants actually said they'd be willing to pay for different amenities, different aspects of apartment performance, including noise control, right? So $38 a month or $455 over the course of a 12-month lease. So quiet, what's it cost? So I put this up here just as a frame of reference, right? Because a lot of times as individuals, we're not able to affect the noise control in our apartments, our condos, our office spaces, and all this kind of thing. So we often resort to things that we can control in order to get some sense of quiet. And a lot of times that's noise canceling headphones, like the ones I have on my head right now. And people are willing to pay pretty good money for these, right? Like $299 for a set of, Bose noise canceling headphones. So just as a frame of reference, right, for what people are willing to pay for, so some sorts of noise control or quiet cost. So with the boost, let's walk through that, right? So the boost, about 45 cents per isolator, that's a retail price. Estimated about 20 cents additional labor per isolator. They're going to be spaced at 16 inches by 24. So you get about 2 2/3 square feet coverage per isolator. So that comes out to about 25 cents, a quarter per square foot for adding the boost to an assembly. If we look at an average apartment square footage, about 1,100 square feet. It's from US Census Bureau data for 2020. So total cost for an average apartment to add boost is about $274 for the entire ceiling of the space. Right? If you're looking at the walls would typically be less square footage, also because if you're only doing one of the demising walls for each apartment, and then probably a corridor wall too, but that's typically going to be less square footage than the ceiling. So again, with that $38 a month rent premium, you got a payback in about 7 months. And once you've hit that payback, with your first tenant, after that, like there's no upkeep, there's no maintenance, there's no replacement costs, there's none of that. There's no staff to maintain it or anything. So the rest of the time, that additional rent premium for a quieter space is just money in the bank. So, and the other thing about this is not only does it work for you, but it works for your partner, anybody else hanging out in the apartment, right? And it works for the first tenant and the next tenant and the next tenant. Whereas noise canceling headphones, right, they only work for one person. So PAC's RC-1 Boost, great way, an inexpensive way to get better acoustics. It works with all the existing systems, typical materials that contractors and architects and everybody is familiar with, right? We're adding it into a typical system. It's in UL fire rated design assemblies, all of these things, all of that information is there to make it easy to get it into a project. And it's only additional 25 cents a square foot, which is cheaper than a lot of other ways of getting it, like adding a layer of gypsum board, things like that we would typically do to try and improve acoustical performance. So that's the end. That's pretty much it. Try and keep it short and sweet for these. And like I mentioned, next month's presentation, you got the URL here to register. Next month's presentation will be on STC and IICs, difference between those, and the new HIIC and LIIC standards. So kind of going to move away a little bit from product-focused things and more just kind of basic acoustics, kind of help educate people about acoustic standards and especially new ones that are coming out. So with that, that's pretty much it. That's a wrap. So now we'll just open it up to any questions that anybody has. And just also want to give a plug for our acoustical testing database. If y'all haven't registered for that, we have a way online where you can go sort through, filter floor ceiling assemblies and wall assemblies, looking for acoustical ratings, fire rated assemblies, all of this kind of stuff. You can check that out at the PACinternationalllc.com website. And we also have, for any architects out there, we have a AIA accredited CEU course through AEC Daily that you can go check out to get your CEU credits. And yeah, that's it. Just open it up for any questions folks might have.
We've recently found out that RC-Deluxe is on allocation. I've heard a varying number of results, but 5,000 pieces seems to be a common theme that we run into. So what does that mean, 5,000 pieces? So 5,000 pieces per branch or per store, if you want to call it that. So if you have multiple stores, or if you have a big project, let's say you have a big project and you have 3 stores in your general area, you can steal all the channel from those stores. The problem with stealing RC-Deluxe from all those other stores is now those customers in those other little areas can't get RC-Deluxe either. So you know, robbing from Peter to pay Paul is great when it works out, but you know, it's construction. Construction continues. What does this mean? So the limited RC-Deluxe, based on 5,000 pieces per branch, using Mike's number earlier of 1,000 square feet is 1,092, I think was the average square footage size. So just using 1,000 feet, it's easier math. Means that each branch can do between 70 and 80 units per month if they're only doing the ceilings. If they're doing demising walls, corridor walls, any additional noise control, like let's say multifamily, the whole bottom floor, that's going to need maybe ceiling isolation, wall isolation in between units. That's not calculated into what I've given you. So 5,000 pieces per month will do roughly 70 to 80 living units, again, if you're just doing ceilings. This is where the RC Boost has some advantages, because the RC Boost can go on any of those other RC channels and get you increased performance up to, or very near to the level of RC-Deluxe. So if you're building an apartment complex, multifamily building, student housing, retirement facility, and you've got 10,000 pieces of RC-Deluxe you need in that per month, you're not going to get there. The Boost gives you that option. It gives you that opportunity. Thanks.
And as we wait for questions too, just to follow on to what Mike said, in this presentation, I really focused on the ability of Boost to improve the performance of resilient channel. But in the database, and I do have a lot of information, we've got a lot of testing to show sort of the comparative performance between Boost and these other types of resilient channel and RC-Deluxe. So you can see those comparisons, and the vast majority of the testing, pretty much all the testing that we've done, we see that other resilient channel plus Boost performs at least as well as RC-Deluxe. So it really can be a substitute, or you can put it into your specs as an approved equivalent to RC-Deluxe, so people don't have to go through this whole chain to find alternatives when they can't source RC-Deluxe. They just already have this alternative of these other resilient channels with Boost. I see Norrell's got a question, got a hand raised. I'm gonna Mike, you
Yeah,
want to
you should be
unmute him?
go ahead, Norl. Your mic is open if you want to open it up.
I think you still have to unmute, Norl.
Okay, thank you. You've answered most of my questions. I can probably go onto the website and see the data and so forth, and you appear to have a good amount of data. One of my worries always with something new on the market is people put things out with one test. And I tell them, if you've only got one test, I really don't know anything.
Yeah, no, we've got lots of testing, and I'm happy to. I mean, you can dig around on the database all you want, but I'm also happy to dig into the data, send you test reports,
and in a case
send you
like
Excel
this,
summaries, everything like that. Yeah.
A lot of times you want multiple tests of the same design, but if you've got a situation like you have, where you've got a whole family of tests of various different designs and so forth, you can follow the trends. You don't necessarily have to have the same design tested over and over. If you can see a pattern in the trends, give you confidence and so forth.
Yeah. And I think you were there for it, Norl. I presented on that at on our boost testing. I think I presented on it at NoiseCon last year, or no, it was earlier this year.
Noise.
Yeah, I think it was Noise. And I'm also giving a presentation at ASA on specifically HIIC and LIIC, and using that to differentiate the performance between different ceiling isolators. And there's a bunch of boost and RC data within that as well too. So
I'll make one comment. Thank Mike for his information about the RC-Deluxe being sort of hard to get and so forth. As I've got clients, I got to warn of that, and this is probably the option to go to get around that and so forth. But there is something else happening out there that I don't know if y'all know much about or any more than I do, but I'm aware of at least one company that now has introduced an identical copy of RC-Deluxe onto the market, an exact copy, and I've noticed another one that comes close, but it's not exact. And the exact copy's been tested to where it looks like it is comparable to RC-Deluxe. So I'm thinking there must not be a patent anymore that they can enforce, and maybe we're going to begin to see some competition there that might come about.
Yeah, actually, Norl, the patent on RC-Deluxe ran out over 20 years ago.
That's what I would have figured.
Right? Because it's
yes,
been a while.
There is one company
so what's kept other people from copying it?
Yeah, there is one company who's putting out an exact copy.
Yes.
I think it's Semco. I could be wrong.
Yes.
Yeah,
that's right.
Semco. Yeah.
But then, yeah, I've heard rumblings of another company also releasing it. I don't know if it's Semco making it for them. There's some of that in the industry where one company will make a bunch of RC channel and rebrand it, allow rebranding.
There's another one recently came out up in the Pacific Northwest area, I think, that is not an exact copy. I think they've got their spacings on 2-inch centers instead of 4-inch centers. So there's a hole every 2 inches and shorter slots.
So it's out of the Northwest. It's either Scafco or Steeler.
It's I think it's Scafco. So I don't think it performs quite as well, but it's better than a lot of the others and so forth.
Yeah.
But
one thing I would also say to look at is the low frequency performance.
Yes, Mike, elaborate on that.
Because I've seen, and let me go back here in my my slides. Like here between these two, right? I mean, there's a 3-point difference in the IIC rating, right? This is between RC-Deluxe and a Philips True 25. There's a 3-point difference in the IIC, but a 5-point difference in the LIIC, and actually a 2-point improvement in the HIIC for the Philips True 25, right? So, I mean, this is just one comparison, right? And obviously, there's a lot of issues with LIIC, especially being measured in the laboratory, and I'm not going to go into all of that, but these are measured, it's the exact same assembly, it's measured in the same lab, same mic locations, all this kind of stuff. So as many of the variables that we could control as possible to get decent LIIC sort of apples to apples comparisons, that's all been controlled in here. So there's some decent information, at least trend wise, not in terms of like actual absolute numbers necessarily, but I have seen that RC-Deluxe tends to perform better, especially at low frequencies.
Yes.
Like I haven't seen as much differentiation between RC-Deluxe and the other ones at high frequencies, but especially at low frequencies. And I'm not exactly sure where that comes from. But we see that the boost tends to improve the low frequency performance of all of it, which I was also surprised. Like I expected, hey, we're putting this little rubber isolator on a piece of steel, we're going to get an improvement in high frequencies. But actually, like you can see with the Philips True 25, the exact opposite happened. The HISC didn't go up much. I mean, it's already very high, but the LISC did go up. So we see this low frequency improvement, you know, with the boost. And I tend to see the biggest differentiation between RC channels at those lower frequencies. So I haven't dug into the data for like the Simco one or whatever, but I would encourage you to look at specifically the low frequency performance for those to see if that does show up the same as the RC-Deluxe.
I would try to look at more tests of that Philips at high frequencies. That may have been an outlier result that if you only had limited tests that gave a better performance.
We've got more in there, and I mean, this also has, you know, a floated engineered wood floor with a rubber underlayment on it. So the high frequency performance is also already very high because of the flooring and underlayment. So it's kind of a, you know, the changes in the HISC are sort of moot anyways when we're above 60. So, yeah.
Okay.
Any other questions? And just to
go ahead and wrap it up, Mike. I think we're good.
Okay, yeah, just to reiterate, a lot of this test data is in the testing database, so you can go in and dig into this and get that information and do your own comparisons and analysis. Yeah, unless there's any other questions, we will go ahead and wrap this up. And like I said, we'll put the recording up on YouTube. And you know, if you have any other questions, specific questions or something like that, feel free to reach out to us. Shoot us an email, give us a phone call. We're always happy to help.